Okay, everybody, this here effect, hue saturation, is a crowd pleaser. It's probably not the most powerful color effect. Actually, it's definitely not the most powerful color correction effect here. But you know what? It's so easy to use. It does so much. It's so versatile that oftentimes when I'm working on a project, I have a deadline, I'll use hue saturation above anything else because it's so fast and I can do so much with it without having to worry about millions of settings or without having to switch to a bunch of different effects. I could just handle it all oftentimes with just hue saturation. So it is my pleasure to show you how this buddy works. So I'm going to apply hue saturation to this art beats clip, people dancing here. Actually, let me resize this. I'm gonna hold the space bar to get the panning hand tool. Move that over so I can see all my parameters here in hue saturation. Now let's talk about this first. First of all, we have these master controls, and these come in handy often. There's master hue, where we can change the hue of all colors. And honestly, I don't think I've ever used this professionally unless I'm dealing with like maybe flat vector art, maybe like a solid layer or, a shape layer or Illustrator art, something that's just a flat color. Otherwise, there really isn't an advantage of just shifting all the colors along the color wheel. There's much better ways to adjust it, even using hue saturation, which I'll show you in just a second. So I'm going to reset master hue, type 0. One of the things too that's really cool, and I actually do use this quite a bit, you can boost master saturation. So if you just want to increase the general saturation of every pixel in the image, just bump up master saturation. Here's the before and the after. Now, I did it a little extra so that you can see the results on screen a little bit better. Oftentimes, as I'm watching Linda training, I can't really tell the settings that people are talking about, especially somebody like Deke McClelland, who's one of my favorites. His eye is so sharp that oftentimes, I'm sitting next to him, I've watched him work and stuff, and he'll be able to say, oh, look at this little tiny shift and stuff, and I just can't see it. So I'm basically just exaggerating this so that you could see it as you're watching it at home there, or wherever you may be watching it. Now you could also take this into the negative to take away saturation. Taking it to negative 100 will make it completely black and white. So this will desaturate it, and taking it to a positive number will resaturate it. But again, you want to be careful. Again, I was, making this extra high so you can see the difference on screen. But generally speaking, typically with most video, especially video like this, like art beat stuff is pretty high quality. You don't want to take it more than, say, 20. That's kind of like a good ballpark estimation. Some footage may be able to be pushed more than that or may need more than that, but 20 is generally a good cap. Now, master lightness, you probably never want to play with. Like brightness and contrast, it universally lightens or universally darkens every pixel in your footage. So that's not good. That's going to take away white if you darken it, or it's going to take away pure black if you try to lighten it. So unless you're dealing with an area of flat color like a solid or Illustrator layer or shape layer or whatever, then probably don't play with master lightness. Not a good idea. Now, if that's all you could do with hue saturation, it wouldn't be the most powerful effect, but there's so much more to it. I'm going to go ahead and reset all of this. And I'm going to go up here to channel control. This is where the power lies. Since we don't really have any selection tools in After Effects where we can, manually say, okay, I want to select this shirt like we would in Photoshop, we can go down to channel control and we could select a color channel. Actually, this isn't like one of the standard color channels like RGB or something. This is basically just like what color you want to affect. So if we said greens, for example, then when we adjusted the hue, you'll notice that we're making these greens in the back blue. Or if we take it the other direction, we're kind of warming them up. And these other colors in the video are pretty much staying put. So even as we were playing with this green here, this pink shirt stays pink. It's kind of cool. Now let me reset this. And what happens when we have a color like purple, which, this is not in this list? Well, we could basically take the next closest thing, let's say magentas, and then we could use this bar as a guide for what we're going to adjust. Now the center of this guide is magenta. We actually want something over here a little bit more to the left. So I'm going to move these little pieces over until these two vertical bars here kind of center on the color that I'm looking for. And these little extra triangles on the side are kind of like a feathered range. So it's going to mostly affect what's in between these two vertical bars and then partially affect this stuff outside of them. Now, as I adjust the hue, you see that only this purple and maybe the back of her collar there, which has a similar purple, are being affected. And I could adjust the saturation and I could adjust the lightness. But notice that it's only affecting this purple. It's not affecting anything else in the image here. You'll notice that as you start going crazy, you start to get some posterization. This looks really terrible. So Really, hue saturation, as powerful as it is and as cool as it is and fun as it is to play with, it really isn't a miracle worker. So you're not going to take something that's maybe a light green and turn it into a dark blue or vice versa and have it look really believable. So it's best to kind of just do these minor tweaks here. And actually, let me just reset lightness so it's a little bit easier to have some wiggle room here. Looks pretty good. Now, if I take off hue saturation, you can see the difference that I made. It's not earth-shattering, but this is still very believable. And what's cool is we can keep layering these. So we could adjust the magentas, and we can go to the greens, maybe just adjust the greens, maybe like we could warm those up or what have you. And so it doesn't affect the magenta, and we can just keep layering these changes in each of these channels here. And there is yet a third benefit of hue saturation, and that is the ability to colorize. So when we check colorize, it's not like Colorama where you actually have like control over how you're coloring things, but it basically just makes it a black and white image with a colored tint. It can be a little rough to deal with though because there's not like a color slider here, so we kind of have to just tweak it and then use this bottom bar as kind of like a general guide, but it's not a live update, so we can't see it as we're scrubbing, but still, we could play with the saturation. Maybe we could add just a slight tint there, or we could have it be really crazy and outlandish or what have you. So there you see the great purposes, the trifold purposes of hue saturation, if you will. We can adjust the master image, the master piece of footage. We could adjust individual channels of color, and we could also colorize the image as well. Truly an effect for all seasons.